All right, what's up, everybody? Kind of a I shouldn't say impromptu, offbeat live stream here. I'm here with Joseph from the Cardinal Rule. You might have remember we did the mock draft together, which was great, by the way. But Vikings and Cardinals practicing and playing this week. Figured be a good time, talk about the practices, talk about camp as a whole, and what his expectations are for the Cardinals coming into this season. So, what'd you think about today, man?
Well, we were talking about this before we went live. I've seen some of the clips on Twitter you have, and under as expected, Cardinals fans are retweeting the clips where Cardinals players get the best of the one-on-one rep, and Vikings fans are retweeting the clips where Vikings players get the best of the one-on-one. So, what I saw, was kind of maybe a lot of the things I'd expect, right? There Byron Murphy Jr. had a nice rep, against Hollywood Brown. Colt McCoy threw kind of not a great pass. Byron Murphy Jr. is a good player. We knew this as a Cardinals fan. Like, his back injury was kind of a concern. But as Cardinals fans, one of the things we know is last year he locked down a lot of teams' number one wide receivers last year, quietly. Where maybe the tight end had big games and teams, certainly beat us a lot, but he had some really good performances. So that wasn't shocking, but we saw some things that I liked, like Michael Wilson. If you don't know who he is, you better get to know who he is, because that dude can run routes. And he had a really nice route against one of your defensive backs, got open, got a nice little, catch on the sideline. And then cornerback Keitrell Clark had a couple nice reps. One that I think people kind of were calling, he did the gritty after he played a nice rep against Justin, Jefferson. I saw the tweet, don't poke the bear,
Don't
man.
poke.
I'm like, come on, this is the NFL. Everyone's poking the bear every week, so whatever. But like Keitrell Clark is a guy that Cardinals fans love. He's a sixth rounder. He's scrappy. I think a lot of people were surprised, myself included, that he went that late. I think I saw him more as maybe a third or fourth rounder, but we're really happy to have him. And he's looked good throughout camp and in the preseason games. He had a really nice game, the first preseason game. So I saw some things I liked. I saw some things I expected. And again, we'll talk about this more. It's going to be a rough year for the Cardinals, and Cardinals fans know this. And the Vikings have higher expectations than the Cardinals right now, and they have some star power that we don't have right now, at least not healthy on the field. So, I saw a lot of what I kind of expected to see, at least in what has come out, on social media.
Well, first and foremost, I did have to laugh at everybody complaining about the heat today. I mean, it
Mm,
was 96 degrees, felt like 101. It's like, I'm in Texas, dude. Like,
yeah.
that's a walk in the park. So that was funny just from the media guys' standpoints, crying about that. But yeah, like you said, we haven't talked since the draft. I thought the Cardinals had a very good draft, and
Mhm.
they got those 2 first round picks for this upcoming season. They pretty much have a plan here. Looks like Kyler Murray might be on the way out. Um, for that, this is going to be a rebuilding year. Maybe they'll figure it out. They'll see what's up there. But yeah, a lot of what you said, I was listening to Taylor Lewan. He said one-on-ones suck. Like, just don't
Mhm.
even watch the clips. Everybody
Yeah.
gets everybody in one-on-one clips. Like,
Mhm.
no matter who you are, there's a clip of you getting beaten a one-on-one, and it's it is what it is. So yeah, the Byron Murphy one, that's been a guy that I think is really not getting talked about enough. He was
Mhm.
good, like we thought he was going to be good coming from Arizona, but anybody's really good for how bad our secondary was last season. It was the bottom of the league, so but he's really impressed me in camp. He looks like you said, a guy who can take away a number one receiver, and if you can do that with a defense that's maybe not great everywhere else, we can figure things out as a whole. I liked what I saw as a unit, as a whole, from the Vikings. Like, a lot of guys says, like, it made very obvious, like, the Vikings are the better football team, and we all kind of expect that coming in. I know we got crazy Paul Allen, our radio host, with conspiracy theories, like, we can't put anything on tape. The Cardinals guys are the Eagles guys. They're going to show it to the Eagles. We play the Eagles week 2. So I just have to laugh. So I was expecting a basic kind of stuff from them. So nothing too crazy. I was impressed, honestly, with James Conner. He had a couple of nice runs today, and our run defense has been very good throughout camp. Our front seven, really the biggest improvement, I think, for the team as a whole, with Brian Flores coming in. They've looked really good. So I saw some good runs from him. The Vikings receivers, we have maybe the deepest receiving core in the NFL. I wouldn't say we're the best, obviously, up in Cincinnati. Those 3 guys really are top dogs. But 1 through 5, we're having a super tight competition for the 5th receiver, and everybody had a good day today. Powell, Rager had a couple of nice catches. it's really interesting to see. I'm really worried about our guard. You guys kind of exposed us in our guard position, which has been we've been hammering like, good God, we got to get this fixed. And if Arizona's doing this, I mean, I know it's not really that bad of a front for the Cardinals, but it's like, yikes.
Well, I was gonna say if we're exposing your guards, you got problems, my friend, because our defensive line is probably right now. I'm not gonna say the weakest unit because I think there's maybe some guys that are gonna surprise some people there, but it is the biggest question mark of any unit on this team right now, in my opinion. Like there's not a bona fide clear starter on that defensive line who you just look at like, we've got reclamation projects like LJ Collier, who's looked actually good for us in preseason, but this is a guy that's, kind of a bust first round pick is, kind of his reputation. And, we lost JJ Watt, we lost Zach Allen. So if our defensive front is making your guard look bad, I mean, obviously I'm hoping that just means our defensive line is better than we fear, but I'd be a little worried if I were a Vikings fan about that.
Yeah, we'll probably split the difference, but again, that's always been our problem. This like anybody with a nose tackle or an interior pass rush, and it's not great. You have a
Mm.
35-year-old quarterback who's not very mobile. It hurts, and there's we've brought in some guys. I don't like. I honestly really don't like our GM. I don't think he's very good. He's got this weird Wall Street background. He just seems like a
Mm.
slick New York cat businessman. I gotta
Okay.
win deals. I love our coach. Like I think KOC is one of the best in the biz. So we could be in an awkward situation where we're winning football games because we have a good coach, but we're not maximizing our potential because I don't think our GM is very good. He two bust first round picks in 2021. It looks like. We'll see. Jordan Addison had a really big day. They said coming back from the concussion. And that's where we're going to strive. Like, if we can protect Cousins enough, we're going to throw the ball all day. We don't have
Mhm.
much of a running game anymore. Cook's gone. I don't know. I don't like to judge preseason games because the Vikings haven't won a preseason game since 2019. So, and we've been bad some of those years. We were obviously good last year. So, I don't know what to think about it, but it'll be interesting to see what tomorrow looks like from everybody. I think it'll be a little bit of a cooler day. Hopefully, they kind of had to change some things around. What are you most optimistic about heading into the season here? Because shoot, we're 2 weeks away come tomorrow from kickoff.
What I'm most optimistic about going into the season is the 2024 NFL draft. but but to reframe that, in terms of what about this current team am I most optimistic about, right? Um, for me, I've really had to kind of calibrate my expectations and how I'm going to view this year about excitement about some of the young players. I want to see who's going to be a player for us in the future. Like who's going to pop? Because like when you've got a team like the Cardinals where you have just so many guys who are rookies or second year players, unproven players who are going to be playing, someone's going to emerge. Someone's going to show themselves to become a legitimate starter, if not better, right? It's just a matter of who, right?
Yeah,
And for me, that's the optimism. And I mentioned a couple of those names. Michael Wilson. I did a video about him after the Cardinals drafted him. Injuries plagued him at Stanford. His injuries were like broken bones. They were not soft tissue injuries. And not that I'm a physician or anything, but like
I would
you
agree. Yeah,
were you worry about the lingering hamstring kinds of issues more than you do about the freakish they broke a bone issues, if that makes sense, right?
yeah.
Bones will heal, and it's just so I hope I'm not jinxing him and he has more injuries, but the hope is that because they were broken bone kind of injuries and not like lingering soft tissue injuries, that maybe, just maybe, those are behind him. And Michael Wilson, dude, there's I highlight this in the video. The film that came out of the Senior Bowl showed this. His route running and his change of direction is really, really good. And I think he's going to be our starting X receiver this year as a rookie. He's been playing with the starters in preseason. So that's a guy a lot of Cardinals fans are excited about in the third round. Um, Keetro Clark, we mentioned, obviously. BJ Ojolari, we haven't seen much from him yet. He missed some time because of injury, so he's just kind of getting up to speed, but that our second round pass rusher. So those are the guys I'm excited about. But there is one other guy who's not a rookie that Cardinals fans are starting to get excited about, and that is Yelda Froholt, our new center
Okay.
from, yeah, he's a former fourth round pick. Scandinavian name. He was with the Browns, and then he was drafted by the Patriots. Played with the Browns most recently. He's been kind of more of a marginal starter. Hasn't captured a starting job. Like last year, he played some snaps at center and guard for the Browns. But he's a guy who had some potential. The coaching staff, our offensive coordinator was with the Browns previously, so he knows him. He was drafted by the Patriots, where GM came from prior to his 2-year stint with the Tennessee Titans. So this is a guy they knew and they picked to bring in to kind of be our starting center. And he wasn't a major name, obviously. Then he wasn't on anyone's radar, but like he's looked really good. He's had not only like his PFF grades in both preseason games have been in the mid to upper 70s, and he's had some solid reps. Like so, the tape looks good and the grades look good. I know it's just preseason, but after having Billy Price as our starting center for a lot of the season and that experiment, Cardinals fans are really excited. And then he's just kind of a fun personality in his interviews. Like, yeah. So he's just got this cool kind of fun Viking kind of vibe to him. And so Cardinals fans, and when I say Viking, not as
Yeah, I know. Actual Viking.
I had to read.
Yeah,
I had to
yeah.
think, oh shit, I'm talking to Vikings. But yeah.
Yeah.
But but so he's kind of a fun player that is quickly becoming a fan favorite. So listen, unfortunately, when your team is not in a position to be good, you have to enjoy those kinds of things. But we are really excited about the future because our new general manager, you talked about how, you don't have a lot of faith in your general manager. Cardinals fans our general manager is probably the guy we're the most optimistic about in the organization, more so than the owner. I think optimistic about the coach, but even more so the general manager. You mentioned, you talked about how good the draft was for them. Cardinals fans agree. The picks, you mentioned the 2 first-round picks, but like we also have some extra like third-round picks. I think it was 6 picks in the top 100, something like that next year, right? So it's like
good value.
Yeah,
a lot of value that you can just add for a roster that's going to need it. Like kind of like not what the Chicago Bears did. The Chicago Bears, like they got the first pick, but then they like spent their picks. Like,
yeah.
I mean, I loved the move up because there really was nobody there for Arizona. I would have said this year they got their guy they wanted to, like you said, the offensive line was the biggest problem. And it looks like they addressed in the draft. They're getting these guys. And it's really good that you guys are optimistic about, general manager, because that's been a position that's, I mean, it's been a dumpster fire to be polite, for the last 7 years or so with everything, coaches in and out, it's a lot. So it looks like there is some stability. I get why the ownership group, everyone's kind of what do you think about Gannon so far as a head coach? Just not too much there yet?
So far, I like what I see. I mean, obviously, all that I have to really go by is, I mean, I watch the press conferences and the decisions he makes, the way he deals with things. I'm seeing things I like though. One, I like that he brought in a lot of young, smart coaches. There's only maybe 1 or 2 veterans on his staff. Now, some people would see that as a negative, but I kind of like the idea, like young ascending coaches do well in the NFL. I mean, you just see, yes, there's some veteran coaches that are good to have around as well, but it just seems like he went out and handpicked from a lot of different places. Some of them were from the college ranks, some of them for places he had coached before. So it just feels like he went out and tried to get the best. Like there's this theory of leadership and management, get the right people on the bus. This kind of, I think it's from a book, Simon Sinek's book, if I'm not mistaken. But like it seems like he's trying to get smart people in the building and good coaches. I like some of the guys he's got, but also he's like installing or establishing a culture of discipline. They've talked about if you're late to a meeting, that's a problem, right? And that, you're not allowed to be late to meeting. They're pretty strict on that. No food in the meeting rooms. Like they're creating accountability and discipline in terms of the team, and like players have commented on that. So I like those things I'm seeing, in the couple preseason games. They looked good against the Broncos, not so good against the Chiefs. A lot of people look good against the Chiefs, but again, preseason, they're trying things. They're trying to see push. You just can't. So like in terms of the X's and O's, we'll see, right? I like that he's planning to let his coordinators call the plays also on defense, which is where he he was a defensive coach, but he is taking a step back and being more that CEO leader, and he's letting his defensive coordinator Nick Rallis, who is a really bright, up and coming mind, kind of call the defense. So I like what I've seen. With coaches, though, it's tough. You have to wait. It's, like with the GM, yeah, we have to see what happens with the players as far as they develop. But we saw the trades Monty made, and they were good trades.
Yeah.
And at least the draft pick, yes, people sometimes will say a draft class looks great, and then down the road it ends up not. But like that, Monty's draft class, the players he actually did draft, not just the trades, have been praised almost universally. Like pundits, people who follow it, they've said that this was a really good draft class, pretty much from top to bottom. So I think with the general manager, we've had more evidence to go by to give us optimism. With the coach, what evidence we have seen has give us optimism, but we just got, we got to see what happens in the regular season. Are they competitive? Are we seeing them playing with discipline and things like that? And those things are a little bit too
Yeah,
be
it's way
determined.
it's too early to tell. Yeah, it's interesting. It's really tough for Gannon because it feels like you guys need a culture reset, like you said, with the high discipline. No offense to Cliff, but I can't imagine there was too much strictness going on around there. He's a loosey goosey type of guy.
Mhm.
Even from when I knew him at A&M,
He seems like a good dude,
oh,
but just
great.
not strict, right?
He's a kind of a loosey goosey, chilled, laid back guy. He's not super detail oriented. Honestly, if you watch the Johnny Manziel doc,
I did.
it looks like Johnny made his career essentially. Cliff really didn't do too much, and Johnny kind of bailed him out there. And he's obviously struggled as a whole. If you look at his body of work, just not bad, but not
Mhm.
what people originally thought him to. So I mean, if Gannon brings in that Philly philosophy, obviously they're the gold standard in the NFC right now. I'm 50-50 on coaches calling plays because like you called plays to get this job. Why wouldn't you keep doing what you're good at? But then, do you lose
I
track of some of the
I have
the
a
details?
philosophy on that. I
Yeah,
have
go
a
ahead.
thought on that.
Go
I
ahead.
think it's more important that you call plays if you're an offensive
Okay.
coach. You know what I'm saying? Because
Yeah.
like, in fact, like, okay, so like everyone talks about if you're hiring a new head coach, you want to get that offensive coordinator, right? And if you're a defensive head coach, it's their defensive minded head coach haven't historically been as successful as offensive minded because once you do get a good offense coordinator, you lose them right to a job
Mhm.
somewhere else. So like kind of my view is if you are hired as a head coach and you're a defensive coach, you have to be that next level leader. It has to be about the leadership. Like a guy like Mike Tomlin,
Mhm.
he's a good X's and O's coach, but he's a
Yeah.
great NFL coach because he's a great leader, right? So if your head coach is a defensive minded coach, I'm fine with him letting the coordinators call the plays because the reason he's there needs to be more because he's a leader of the organization. If your head coach is an offensive minded head coach, probably shouldn't be calling the plays because that's the thing you really need to lean on him more. Not that leadership isn't important, but that you've got him as a head coach because he's an offensive, mind.
Yeah, guy. I can see that. We don't, defensive head coaches are starting to become the way of the dinosaurs. Unfortunately, maybe special teams guys are the perfect head coach, like Harbaugh in Baltimore. You just kind of
Mhm.
you let everybody else do it, and like you said, just coming from the Vikings having Zimmer for a long time, a defensive guy, there is a very large concern that you get these good young offensive play callers, and there's just a lot of
Mhm.
turnover, and it really wears on your team from a success standpoint. Um, so yeah, it's a tough spot. Hopefully, this is an interesting season. You don't, like you said, he kind of gambled, going with a lot of young coaches, just unproven guys essentially, or up and comers. Hopefully the Cardinals don't overperform too much this year, and that way you can not lose those guys, but you see the really positive stuff. So now we have 2 years in a system with all our position coaches, all our assistants who are good coaches that we believe in, and we're ready to roll with whatever quarterback we're rolling out here for 2024, be it Kyler, be it Caleb Williams or Drake May, whatever they decide to do. Where do you stand on this whole quarterback thing? Because I don't think Kyler's coming back this year. Wouldn't you agree?
I don't agree. Actually, I think he'll
No.
be back this year.
Okay,
Um,
really?
yeah, I no, it's a question of when. But reports are this rehab is doing well. I've been kind of placing my over under on as week 4. That's kind of I'm kind of ballparking that. Maybe it's later than that. Probably not earlier. Some fans are saying earlier. I probably think it won't be. So but in terms of him coming back, like, and the whole thing with these kinds of knee injuries is, yeah, as players usually get back 8 to 10 months, but the running doesn't come back fully until the following
Unless
year,
you're Adrian
right?
Peterson. Unless you're Adrian
Right.
Peterson. Yeah.
Yeah, unless you are literally not human, right?
Yeah.
A demigod. But like, so I totally get Kyler. If he comes back this year, his running will not be 100% until the 2024 season. But here's the thing. If the Cardinals do have the high draft picks, which there's a high probability, whether it's us or the Texans, we're likely to have a quarterback pick,
Yes. I
therefore,
at
right?
the worst, you can
So,
trade up to get that if need
right,
be
right.
with both those picks.
So the odds are the Cardinals are going to be in a position where if they wanted to go after a rookie quarterback, they would have the pick likely to do that. And if you are the Cardinals, this is a big decision, right? And I'm Team Kyler. I believe in his talent. I not only his leg talent, but his arm talent. Um, and I think if you're the Cardinals, you want to see Kyler play this year in your system to give you information to make that decision. I think they know that they may have that. Well, I mean, they're smart people.
Yeah.
They know that this is a likely decision they're going to have to make next offseason going into the draft of whether or not they're going to try to move on from Kyler and draft someone like Williams or May, or whether they're going to stick with Kyler and build around him. And in order to make that decision, they're going to want to have experience and film on tape and their eyes on him in games playing. And if they see him seem to grasp the offense well and get better as the season goes on, and they feel good about what they have in him, then I think what they're going to do is, yep, they're going to trade those picks. If they have the first overall pick, they're going to trade it for like a haul that you haven't seen in a long time, and they're going to build they're going to build a really, really good roster with those picks. Because they're going to have maybe a couple first round picks next year, and then they'll add some the year after and a day 2. I mean, they're going to have a crazy amount of draft capital. I'm salivating by
Yeah.
how much draft capital they could have if they have that first overall pick and someone wants to trade it for Caleb Williams, right?
Yeah.
And then get someone like Marvin Harrison Jr. and a really good defensive player in the first round, plus having another first round or 2 pick years after. So I think they're going to want to see him play so that they have the information to make that decision. And I'm hopeful that it works out and they build around him.
Yeah, the schedule's tough here. I just pulled up y'all's schedule. Like
Yeah.
the bye week's super late, which is kind of
Mm-hmm.
unfortunate. You'd want that, like you said, towards the earlier. The good news is if you're saying sometime after week 4, the schedule is not great for y'all to open the season. It's pretty
Yeah.
tough. You know, at Washington, home against New York, home against Dallas, at Frisco, Cincy. Those are tough games. So the season could be where they want it to go. Like, let's be realistic here. The staff, I think, wants it to be a tough season. For them just to have those high picks, whatever they decide to do. I don't hate that idea. If they truly believe in Kyler, they like what they see from Kyler, you're going to get a haul and not just picks. You can get players that you can plug and play that are second, third year guys that will start. Just depending who's up there, who needs a quarterback. God knows what these things are going to look like from them. The contract is the big bugaboo here, right? For them getting rid of him. It's like 81 million in dead cap to
Yeah.
get rid of him, which is, I mean, it's a thing, but if you're not
Mhm.
paying a quarterback, you can afford these things with that. So you got him week 4. I was here in December, never.
I mean, it could, and here's the thing though, the recovery from these kinds of injuries, from everything I've read, it's hard to have a strict timeline because it's milestone based. You make progress to
Yeah.
this milestone and then you move on. And sometimes it takes longer or quicker depending. They're not going to want to rush him, but I think based on the timeline, I mean, I do think 4 to 6 weeks in seems realistic. It might take a little longer. I've heard a lot of people say October as well, but it's all
I
over the place in terms
I
of the
I
timelines.
trust him to be ready. It's just maybe are you a little extra careful? Like you said, like
Yeah.
The big part of Kyler's game is always going to be his running, no matter when it is, what it is. He's just so athletically gifted and so shifty. Now, like you said, the offensive line has improved a good amount. It looks
Mhm.
like that'll help a lot. He won't have to do so much out there. Um, so maybe it's later in the season if the season is foregone and say we're gonna give you 7, 8 games to try and get this going. It's not going to hurt us if you win games for us. It's not going to move our draft position too much. So I do think that is the bright side. I would be feeling, optimistic. It's tough to go into a season knowing, like, I can only imagine, especially at your age, you're older guy, like, we're running out of seasons here to get this thing done. I know how I feel. I know how my dad feels. But it is good to see, okay, my team has a clear plan. We know what we're doing. We're confident in the leadership of this thing. So it's not all doom and gloom because I mean, there's some teams out there it's just like kind of floating in no man's land. And are we going to be bad for another 20, years it feels like. I mean, Vegas has never recovered it seems like
I was
since
gonna
like
say Raiders. I
yeah,
mean, that came to my mind too.
like they've never recovered. Like they've made the
Mhm.
playoffs twice, but they haven't really done anything. I mean, all the hype on the Jets now, like the Jets are another team that just, it just feels like it's always the same teams throughout the NFL that just kind of float, and it's the same teams that are always great unless you find a quarterback. Like the Bengals were
Mhm.
a floaty
Yeah.
team that never did anything, and Joe Burrow saves the day. So one quarterback can always change your franchise. Um, as far as I'm trying to think where I want to go here. What do you think they're gonna do? Are they gonna be possibly sellers at the deadline? Do you think they like the team they have? Like I'm thinking like guys like Hollywood Brown, like they did trade for him, but he's kind of an extra asset that maybe he doesn't feel like a guy you want to build around moving forward. Like you said, you want to go get Marvin Harrison Jr. He's your number one receiver like that. Do you think that they could possibly be shipping any sort of veteran guys? We know Buda Baker had the whole contract dispute, stuff like
Yeah.
that. Do you think they just go full sell maybe at the deadline to get even a bigger price? I mean, you're going to get a premium on guys come the deadline that think they're going to win a Super Bowl by adding one or two pieces.
I don't know that they're gonna go hardcore sell everything. I mean, there's only so many pieces they have that are probably going to be viable. I mean, Hollywood Brown, I think, is an interesting one because the previous regime traded for him right on draft day. Obviously, he's under contract. He's a good player. So they kept him around. But do they plan to extend him? And because is this last year of his rookie
I'll
deal? It
pull up
might
his
be.
contract, but
I
yeah.
think, yeah, he's getting close if it isn't there. So I don't have a strong sense of if they feel like he's part of the long-term future or not. So if they don't, I mean, he and Kyler are tight from college, so they might want to keep him around because they have a good rapport. But I could see that happening. I don't think Buddha's going anywhere. They worked out a thing with him, giving him a little bit of a pay raise. They didn't give him an extension, but it's enough to keep him satisfied, and they want to keep him for the culture. I mean, that dude,
Yeah.
you want him in your locker room.
Yeah.
Um, you know, like is the other pieces that you might look at, like, is anyone going to want to trade for someone like I will say one player, and this is something we've talked about actually in my live streams, that and this would be more of a, in my opinion, a one of those trades that happens before cuts, right? You know how teams kind of
Yeah.
trade away positions of depth. Josh Jones, we have an offensive tackle named Josh Jones, former third round
Oh,
pick.
yep.
Yep. A lot of people have been talking about that on Twitter. I've seen that, and the national media have talked about that.
Yep.
And
The
he he
Jets.
he
The Jets
yeah, oh,
picking
I
up a
know. There,
kid.
I tweeted something about his PFF grades, and like half a dozen Jets fans were retweeting and commenting on that, like, "Hey, kick the tires, Jets!" I'm like, you know, but like that's a guy. He started like half the season for us last year and graded in the 70s. I mean, solid starting caliber tackle. He was a third round pick. A lot of people felt like he should have gone higher than that. He was a really graded really well in pass blocking in college. So he's a guy that a team that needs a left tackle might look at him. He's the last year of his rookie deal. They might look at him. Let's trade for him, and then we can extend him. And the Cardinals' perspective, they've got Paris Johnson Jr. and DJ Humphrey starting, and we've got Kelvin Beachum. Listen, he's old, but like we have four guys who can start at tackle, and you need three really, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
essentially.
right? You need your swing tackle. And if someone goes down with an injury and they need more depth, our starting left guard right now, Elijah Wilkinson, has started games at tackle before. So, I that's the if there's a player that I think is most likely to be traded, that'd be the guy, and I think it'll happen before final cuts. Because if you're the Cardinals, you look at it and it's like, well, he's probably not their future plans, because the Paris Johnson Jr., unless they're planning to extend him and trade DJ Humphries in the offseason. So I think you consider trading him so before losing him in free agency. Now, with that, if they let him walk in free agency, there's always the potential of compensatory picks, but that comes back to, if they plan to be active in free agency, then they wouldn't get a compensatory pick for him. If they don't plan to be active, then maybe they would. So there's a lot of variables in there, but that's a guy that I could see them moving on from. But in terms of just purging the roster and letting guys go, they're trying to build a culture, and they in free agency, they didn't get a lot of big name guys. They got guys that they had experience with, that they wanted to bring in, like Kaiser White, a linebacker who was with Philadelphia, right? Menton Froholt, the center, who was with Cleveland, with our offensive coordinator, was with him last year there. So they are trying to build a culture, and I think most of the guys on the roster are either guys that they brought in for that, or they're young guys, or they're guys that they plan to keep, or it's guys that I don't know we'd have a big trade market for. Like Isaiah Simmons is a guy that, like, is he, they decline his 5th-year option. This is
Make it or break it year.
right. And I think they want to give him a chance to see if he's got, and if he does, they'll try to extend him after the season. But, like, who's gonna offer a reasonable trade for him right now? Some people might lowball, but I think the Cardinals would rather keep him and see because if they keep him and he plays well, and we decide to re-sign and extend him, great. If he plays well and he leaves in free agency, he could and gets a good contract because he played well, we could get a compensatory pick.
Yeah.
So
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 it's tough.
yeah.
I get that. Dude, I was just looking. Cardinals are in good cap shape for next year. They got 7th right
Mhm.
now, and we know that's all moved around. Hollywood Brown is on the last year of his deal this year, and he doesn't feel like a guy you're going to extend, unless go on the cheap necessarily. Like, I don't know. Hollywood Brown has always kind of felt like, I know Baltimore drafted him to be that guy. He just feels like a 3rd or 4th receiver that, he makes a play now and then. He's as fast as the wind. Maybe not the most secure hands in the world. For that, I agree with you. I'm really trying to make Buda Baker happy. That's a guy you kind of have to keep around, especially if we're all, like you said, all about culture, all about culture. Plus the defense Gannon's bringing in really, really highlights the safeties. He puts them all over the place. They get pressures. They pick the ball off, and that's kind of what Buda Baker does. He's just like kind of a fixer.
Mhm.
I compare him a lot to Harrison Smith. Just
Mm.
plug and play anywhere, fixer. He'll go make a play. Um, he's that kind of guy. So I think that's a good move. Moving, left tackles are hard to come by in this league. There's probably about 5 or 6 of them that can really play the game. But if you think it's not a max extension type of tackle, and teams are desperate for a guy,
Mhm.
for more than a capable starter out there, especially teams like the Jets, who are completely all in on a Super Bowl right now. Like, it is Super
Right.
Bowl or bust within these 2 years, which is a shame for them because the AFC is just a gauntlet right now. I'm
Right.
very glad we're comfortable in the NFC, as things stand, because good God, Kirk Cousins might be the 2nd best quarterback in the NFC at this point playing
No
this year.
offense, but
Yeah.
that's not a great look for
Yeah.
the conference.
No, I mean, yeah, like I said, Kirk's probably about 9th or 10th best quarterback in the league, and he's probably 2nd in the NFC, as all things considered from a starting standpoint. So it is good to see that, I like that the Cardinals have a plan
Mhm.
moving forward. I expect them to win this weekend. Like I said, we're pretty awful in the preseason,
Wow.
so they're gonna have a nice little preseason. I did watch that Broncos game because it was on the national game, and I just kind of laughed at the way the Broncos lost that game at the end in typical Broncos fashion. So I do think there is hope, there is potential. I'm not a Kyler guy. I would get him out just because of personal interactions. I think I've told you I've had with him
Mhm.
while he was at A&M, and stuff I know with people who really know him, that he's just not that. He's not a grinder, and you quarterback's got to be a grinder. Like I even got turned off. I don't know if you watch quarterback, like Kirk Cousins talking about, he doesn't do football on Tuesdays, which I heard is kind of a lie. He does, but it's not that kind of thing. Patrick Mahomes, I mean, good God, just that man eats, sleeps football. It looks like he just wants to win. We know the stuff with Brady, so I'll be interesting to watching us tomorrow. I'm hearing, I'm excited for our season. I think a little bit more than most people. I know the national media is kind of down on us as a whole just because we won, 8 one-score games. We lost the postseason game to Daniel Jones, but like that's not our offense's fault. The defense let Daniel Jones carve them up. And I mean, Daniel Jones is not a $40 million a year quarterback. Sorry, Giants. I don't know what to tell you there. So I think I have a higher view on the Vikings. The schedule's not too bad. We do play the AFC West, which is a little scary with the Chiefs and the Chargers, but it is what it is. So I think I'm good here. Do you got anything else you want to talk about or anything?
No, I mean, I think we've hit on most of the important stuff. I mean, this is what it is for the Cardinals. It's a rebuild year. We are excited about the future, but this is going to be a little bit of a rough year watching the games. But I'm hopeful that we're going to see some more discipline and see that they're better coached. They might not have. I think the Cardinals are going to get Cardinals and Cardinals players are sometimes going to get beat based on a talent difference at certain parts of the roster. But what I'm hoping is that they don't get beat because they didn't play disciplined football,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I hope they don't get beat because they got out coached. If a Justin Jefferson beats one of our corners because he's Justin freaking Jefferson, I can live with that. If he beats one of our corners because our corner made a mistake, that's what I don't want to see.
I love that point. That's actually a great point. I love that point that you're talking about. It's like, I just want to see my team play hard, play physical football, I'm sure, not make mental mistakes, low penalties, stuff like that. And, if it comes down to the fourth quarter, it's just like, this team is better. Like, we're playing a better team. We're playing the 49ers. Like, they got dudes across the board, up and down. It is what it is. And maybe
2 years from now, when those draft picks hit for us, if we have that foundation that you're talking about there, we will have better players and we'll be winning those games 2 years from now. Right?
And you don't even have to, you just win one of those games this year. You upset somebody, because I mean, they're probably going to be a dog in most of the games this year. Maybe not all.
I think all of the game. I think they are underdogs right now in every game.
I don't. Yeah,
as it stands.
Yeah, as it stands. But those things change. I'm thinking, you get at Houston. That's a game right there. We can get, who knows what the Falcons or the anybody's gonna look like. The Rams. I mean, if Stafford goes down, the Rams are terrible. Let's be honest here. So I do think it's gonna be good for them. I agree with you. I think they're heading in the right direction. And my team, I don't know. I think we're okay here. I think we'll make the playoffs, and hopefully we're in the NFC Championship game against the Eagles, and then we never beat the Eagles, so I can't really be too upset about that. But I think this was a good talk. I'll be, like I said, watching to see what we do this rest of this week with each other. It's a good measuring stick, especially for Arizona. I don't love it for us necessarily, unless just need a confidence boost here and then. But tell everybody where we can find you, check you out, because I'm sure I got some Cardinal fans in the audience.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at my Twitter handle is there, JOKOMO13. But the main place to find me is on YouTube, The Cardinal Rule. Do Arizona Cardinals analysis, game reactions, live streams like this, all kinds of stuff. So the main place is The Cardinal Rule on YouTube.
All right, perfect. I got a link to his channel in the description of this stream. So if you guys want to check him out, Cardinals fans, should be a long but optimistic season. So hopefully not too long of a season. It's okay to be bad. It's not okay to be bad, and no hope for the future. So thanks again for this conversation, Joseph. I enjoyed it. And I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Yeah, thanks.